For this session, I wrote 65 words. For this session, I wrote 116 words. For this session, I wrote 77 words.
The lighting is wild today, but I can't fix it, so we're just gonna carry on with this vlog. It kind of adds its own ambiance, so we're gonna roll with it. Anyways, let's jump right in. Friday, my husband and I went to our favorite local bookstore. It's not really local, it's about a little over an hour's drive away from us. But nonetheless, we went there and I got quite the haul. It is a really adorable shop, as you saw in the clips earlier, and it's actually a hybrid bookstore antique store. So it has lots of other fun trinkets. They always seem to have an awesome selection of books, and one could truly get lost in that store all day long. They also have coffee, which is always a bonus, so that was a really, really fun time. My husband and I had planned to do a hike after the bookstore, which is why we didn't spend all day long there, but it ended up sleeting, so we moved our hike to the next day. And that was incredibly timely because the snow had fallen overnight and it was such a beautiful, beautiful adventure. By far, it has been one of my favorite hikes, but it was also incredibly terrifying because the rocks were slippery and I was afraid of falling into the gushing waters. Still very, very worth it. And it was so incredibly recharging and resetting, and so I'm glad for that turn of events. Before I get into the book haul, I wanted to share some new ideas I have been contemplating. Recently, I discovered the field of morphology, which is basically the study of forms, and it is a branch in linguistics. I do not have an educational background in linguistics or in writing, and I'm very much an everyday person figuring writing out as I go along. So morphology is a totally new subject for me, and I'm very fascinated by it. But along with that, I have been revisiting my studies in archetypes. I was reading a book on my phone. I can't remember the exact title of it. There are a handful of books I'm reading on my phone actually that I forgot to mention in my currently reading video update. Anyways, I'm poor at keeping track of titles. But in this book, the author discusses archetypes, and he presented archetypes in a way that I've actually never thought of before. Christopher Vogel is the name of the author of this book, and it is a book on writing and the hero's journey, and he takes a really interesting spin on it. And the way that Vogel presented archetypes in this book was so fascinating to me. Basically, his premise is that archetypes aren't actually fixed, they're moving and dynamic. They aren't permanent fixtures or qualities of a character or even sub-characters. They're actually temporary and transient. This blew my mind because I have only seen archetypes being presented as anchors of a person's character, and Vogel's take on archetypes as dynamic aspects is so incredibly radical to me. Along the lines of this new discovery and synthesizing my beginner's foray into morphology, a new theme emerged for me, that of classification. Classification, categorization, how we group forms in our world, and archetypes being in a way a kind of classification we use to sort out people's behaviors, points of interest, trajectories. It occurred to me that having now a dynamic perspective on archetypes rather than a fixed one alters the classification system entirely of archetypes. And when you change a classification system, you change its assumptions, you change its standards, you change the entire value network that's been inscribed to that system. And especially when a classification system is viewed dynamically, that raises its appraisal to that of a thematic level rather than an index level. So those are some of my initial thoughts in this new study on morphology and archetypes. And now let's get into the books. Before I get to my bookstore haul, I do want to single out one book that I did not get from the bookstore. And this is Henry Kissinger's World Order. I started reading this book on my phone earlier this year, but I did not enjoy the ebook format, so I finally picked up a copy using my Amazon points. I do find that there are some books I just have to read the physical copy of, and this is one of those books. I'm gonna roll through my bookstore haul pretty quickly because I am running out of my time span to film this video. I'm catching a little window of time during my day to do this. But first off, I found this really interesting book that I've never heard of before called Orlando Furioso, Volume 1. And it is beautiful. It is a beautiful book. I'll read the back. It says, a new prose translation of Ariosto's epic fantasy of the age of chivalry, thronged with sorcerers and hippogriffs, ladies and their knights, magic rings, wondrous swords, magnificent horses, and more plots than you can shake a sword at. In a Boolean dream world, teeming with life, laughter, and a super colossal cast of world-renowned heroes. So there's that. And then I found this book of poetry by Pablo Neruda, Residence on Earth, and really the title is what caught my eye, because I often do feel like I am an alien on this earth. And from the spot checks I've done in this book, it also seems that Neruda feels similarly about being a visitor on this planet. Next up is Stoner by John Williams. I have seen this book appear so many times in the past couple of months. And so seeing this copy, I decided that it was finally time for me to grab it. From what I understand of Stoner, this is a rather quiet fiction. It follows the life of Stoner, who is a professor at a university, I believe. Yes, I think so. And I do enjoy quiet, plotless books, so I'm very eager to read this. And then next up, I have a book by Friedrich Schiller, Don Carlos, and Mary Stuart. And this is a play, I believe. These are two plays. And I was drawn to this book because I believe this Friedrich Schiller was a good friend of Goethe, and I love Goethe. So next up, I found a copy of Eastern Body, Western Mind by Anna Dia Judith. And this is also a book I had started reading on my phone in ebook format, but then I realized I needed to read this in the physical copy. In the history section, I found The Icon and the Axe, An Interpretive History of Russian Culture by James H. Billington. This caught my eye because of the Christmassy decorations, but the fact that this is an interpretive history, and I thought that was very unique because most histories aren't labeled as interpretive, and I also thought it was very fitting for the Russian culture. Next up, I found this book on a history of Wales by John Davies, and it is a massive book. I think Wales is such a beautiful country, and I would love to visit someday, so I'm very, very interested in learning about its history. I think its language is also so fascinating, and there was one point where I tried to learn it, but I did not have the dedication to really fully commit to it. In another lifetime, maybe I will learn it, but for now, I honestly, realistically can't give that time and effort to learning the Welsh language. Lastly, in this book haul, these books were a complete surprise, and it was also a full circle moment because it was at this bookstore that I discovered the first volume of the Penguin translation of In Search of Lost Time, and my husband actually saw this first, but we found the second one and the third one just ready for me, so I picked it up even though I have the box collection of the OG translation, and even though I had griped about not really vibing with the Penguin translation after Lydia Davis, it just felt way too serendipitous for me to ignore, so I grabbed these, and I will be reading these before I get into the box set because I have plans for that box set. I will be reading that straight through. That's my goal. I almost forgot. I have one more book that I got in the mail, and this is Vanity Fair by Mr. Thackeray. That is it for my book haul, and now I'm going to get to my writing session, and once I have that done, I will insert that clip at the end of this video, and then I will see you in the next vlog.
For this session, I wrote 53 words, and that is a wrap for this vlog.